Welcome back to Let It Rip. We're cutting through the campaign slogans to talk about the issues that should be front and center in this mayoral race, but aren't. Let's start with what's happening behind the walls of Rikers Island. We're still locking up mostly black and brown people, many of them pre-trial, many simply too poor to make bail, conditions are inhumane, people are dying, and yet most candidates talk about Rikers like it's some distant idea, not an immediate emergency. Now let's zoom out and look at our neighborhoods. Housing isn't just about rent, it's about design, dignity, and power. Why do luxury towers keep popping up while NYCHA buildings rot? And let's not forget reparations and tackling the growing racial disparity in New York City. Here to discuss is chairperson for the Commission on Racial Equity, Linda Tajani, criminal justice advocate Darren Mack, and Pascal Sublime, architect, founder of Beyond the Built Environment, and author of Greatness. So Darren, let's jump into it. Rikers Island, for many years, probably over a decade now, folks have been calling for Rikers to be closed. Mayor Adams said he would do it, hasn't been done. How important is it for any mayoral candidate, and who do you think is the one to do it?
Yeah, I think it's a critical issue for all the candidates. Rikers Island is a stain on our city. Thousands of people are detained there pre-trial. Half of the population of Rikers Island has a mental health issue, and it's devouring a lot of our city budget resources, $2.7 billion a year. And it's costing New York taxpayers over $500,000 a year to keep one person incarcerated on Rikers Island. And that money could be diverted to other things. And Rikers, the sooner that we close Rikers, the sooner that we get those resources.
And
back
one of the
into
things we've seen that I know you're very clear and aware of is many individuals have now died at Rikers Island since the Adams administration. I think we're over 40, probably approaching 38 individuals. Do you think that addresses this, individuals who are literally dying at Rikers with no real response from the current administration?
Yeah, it's directly impacted. Unfortunately, this mayor administration hasn't lifted a finger to address, decarceration, haven't lifted a finger to address the mental health crisis that's happened on Rikers Island. It hasn't been a priority for him, but thanks to City Council, thanks to survivors of Rikers like myself and family members and organizational partners in the campaign to close Rikers, we've been pushing the city to actually move things forward so we can address that human rights crisis that's happening on Rikers Island.
And it's powerful because addressing Rikers, you get to pay attention to mental health, you get to address the spending that's happening, and then the community impact when folks re-enter. But one of the challenges around Rikers is that folks are saying, let's close Rikers and build more jails. So Pascal, of course, the built environment talks about, should we be building jails to begin with? What are your thoughts about it? And how do you feel like we address this Rikers kind of challenge where it is, we have to dismantle this facility, but create a bunch of other facilities to make the system work?
I really think there's a disconnect between the two elements. We do not need to recreate the same structure and infrastructure that has harmed our communities. So I want the city, the design profession to understand and claim our part and our role in perpetuating these injustices through the built environment, and how architecture has the responsibility to do so. So when we think about taking down Rikers, which is critical and important because even as architects and builders, we take a pledge, we are registered to protect the health, safety, and welfare of society. And these structures are not doing
They don't do that, right?
Right. So now if we know that that infrastructure and how it's designed is perpetuating racism, sexism, and all forms of oppression, then recreating them and multiplying them across the different boroughs is not a great process. Why can't we explore different typologies that actually heal, ways of restorative justice and architecture in a way that addresses all of the critical issues that we're talking about in a sustainable way, where we're also disconnecting the idea of black and brown bodies in cages?
One of the projects that you worked on was the Hip Hop Museum, which of course had affordable housing above it. Do you think a project like that can be replicated? Do you think it makes a real impact and dent on this issue of affordable housing and also home ownership? What are your thoughts about that?
It is my strong power that people deserve homes. Right? And when we think about affordable housing, that should not come at the quality of their life. And so creating a project, the Bronx Point, that has 542 affordable housing, that is designed with the concept of hip hop, talks about idealizing our culture and manifesting it and architecturalizing it in the built environment. And having the first brick and mortar hip hop museum, meaning the first structure built to perpetuate and elevate our contribution to society nationally, globally, is powerful and something that must be done in many different communities, and understanding those histories and documenting it and embedding it in a way where it can't simply be erased.
It's interesting in this moment because we're talking about New York City, but how does this play nationally? Because You have the African burial grounds, which which you were a part of, and now the Smithsonian is under attack. Do you think what New York City does around architecture will send a message nationally? Do you think it's important for New York to send a particular message to the Trump administration?
Absolutely. New York holds the highest number of licensed registered architects in the country. And fun fact, my role is the 315th living African-American woman architect in the country. We are rare, but we're here. And we push agendas through NOMA, the National Organization of Minority Architects, that talks about how we transform and use those structures that we're using in these cities, but understand there's specific aspects to this and how we create projects here that is different in, let's say, another state, Utah, California, Michigan. All those things have different bespoke critical points that needs to have community engagement that actually allows to bring the voice of the community in the process of design.
Where is reparations in this conversation, Linda? Oftentimes, or really in this moment, because Trump has kind of gained such prominence, people are fighting him and fighting his executive orders. You almost hear no discussions around reparations, and a few months ago you did. How does that play in the mayoral election? How do we let that issue come to the forefront?
Well, I would say states and different municipalities are continuing to push for reparations. One challenge we have right now is that Trump is using the word reparations to pay white people for what he perceives to be their pain and suffering during DEI, without acknowledging the fact that white women were among the primary group of people that received great benefits as a result of DEI. That has not swayed, at least in my work here in New York City or across the nation, the commitment
to
ensure that the specified claim for a specified people is met. It is long overdue.
What would you like to see from a mayoral candidate in this moment, particularly around reparations? What's your ask of them?
I would say my ask for anyone who's taking this office is first and foremost that there needs to be a commitment to the racial equity planning process that New York City has. Right now, the mayor is 469 days overdue with this plan. He has held this plan now. We're in our second year of no plan. He is over 365 days late with a true cost of living measure. Reparations is not just about ensuring that people get a check, but it's also about completely restructuring our system. Government is accountable to all of the 38 people that have been killed at Rikers. They didn't just die at Rikers, they were killed at Rikers because of a lack of services and several other reasons. We have people dying every single day in this city because of chronic illnesses.
And do you think, all of you, do you think it's important for the folks working on specific issues, Rikers, criminal justice reform, mental health, reparations, the built environment, not building facilities like Rikers Island, to work together, right? Because oftentimes people see these issues as separate and distinct, but are these issues a part of a people's kind of agenda that the mayor should be aware about and should change how they're moving? What are you folks' thoughts on this?
Yeah, like the campaign to close Rikers is not just freedom agenda. It's a coalition of over 200 organizational partners, from service providers like the Fortune Society and Cases to faith leaders like Trinity Church and Riverside Church and other organizations that provide services and programs. So we need a coalition in order to change and build the city that we want to live in.
And I would say we do have a people's agenda. The New York City Commission on Racial Equity went and received feedback from 4,212 New Yorkers. We have 18 community equity priorities that are actions government needs to take to improve the well-being of New Yorkers. And we specifically focused on communities harmed by racism and social injustice. Over 35% of our respondent pool are from the Black community in New York City.
How do we get the mayors to respond to the people's agendas, to the coalitions, to actually show up different, even like what architects are doing around, we're not gonna, hopefully, we don't participate in the building of facilities like jails. How do you get them to pay attention? And so that doesn't just stay within your particular universe.
Honestly, I think it's moments like this where they're campaigning. This is where we ask these questions and not be general about it. Why can't we start being specific and bespoke about Black and brown communities about these topics? And as my colleagues here are saying, we need to work as a coalition. pool resources to understand what are the impacts and how each of our superpowers in the positions of leadership that we have, that we can infiltrate and make it a big issue that they must address, where they can't continue to skirt around no Trump. Beyond that, what are you doing?
So what would you like to see a mayoral candidate say out front, right? There are candidates who are talking about wealth, they're talking about public safety. Are there particular things you would like to see a mayor say, hey, listen, I'm standing on this issue because I'm aligned with this particular group to move this forward? And when would you like to hear it?
Yeah, so far all the candidates that I've heard speak about Rikers, they said they support closing it, and it's things that even this mayor right now can do. Like one of the largest facilities on Rikers Island, AMKC, is empty. Transfer it from the Department of Corrections to the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, like the previous administration transferred one of the facilities on Rikers Island under the Renewable Rikers Act. So something like that could happen right now.
That's a powerful point, because we are in a moment where not only, of course, is there a mayoral election, primaries coming up, but they can use this moment, their power, to actually get some things done before the primary happens, right? Or before the election happens. So how do those candidates actually use this moment to substantively move the issues, not just talk about them?
Yeah, that's a good question, because the mayor has the power, so you have to have that, be in that seat in order to move things. As far as candidates, I think talk more details about how you envision to expedite the closure of Rikers Island. Lay that out, to New Yorkers, and we'll see like who comes up with the best plan. But we have recommendations. The Lippman Commission has recommendations. So yeah, just lay it out and commit. What would you do in your first 100 days?
But then, sorry, just to say, in addition to what we're tearing down, what are we building up? And what is the procurement process, how we're including community in those processes, mandating it as part of it. Sustainability, making sure we're designing for a resilient, sustainable future in our built environment. We have a significant of vacant office spaces that could be being converted into affordable or residential components that addresses some of the homeless issues. I think as we talk about the things that need to be taken away, we also need to be thinking really big and aspirational about what can be done, what can be built that actually fortify and structure a beautiful future for our people.
And it's fascinating because this idea of closing Rikers Island, which of course is long overdue, it's a facility that has caused tremendous trauma to thousands, tens of thousands across the city. What could happen with that space?
Yeah.
If we close Rikers in terms of building something that really could transform the economic situation, livelihood of New Yorkers.
But it's not just building something new, it's also keeping history and a record of what was done here, right? And using that and manifesting it in the structure that we're doing. So we're keeping history, we're repairing and we're healing through architecture, and we're building up on that. But it's nothing that us can sit in a room and figure out. It's something that you have to have direct conversation with the community that's directly impacted by those projects that are being put forward.
Yeah.
Well,
I would say just sort of one thing to consider is that when we are talking about innovative ideas, when we're talking about solutions that come from community, they are almost, I would say almost often coming in the form of protests, demands, petitions, which are great and absolutely needed. Unfortunately, that happens every time a Black person dies. And we actually need to get to a place as a city where Black people do not need to die in order for government to take action, whether it be at Rikers or in community. Community consistently comes out and tells us what they need government to do, where they need the investments, how can we improve the procurement process to shorten the time frame, to make sure that Black businesses that are seeking these contracts actually get the contracts. We know what to do and that we have solutions at the table. We need to get to a place as a city where Black bodies are not necessary, the death of Black bodies are not necessary in order for change to happen.
And for me, that becomes a question of leadership. Because the people have spoken time and time again. I know I've been with Darren at many a press conference after someone has died at Rikers Island or opposing any particular issue in the criminal justice system. But the question becomes, do we have the leadership that will get in front of an issue without the people saying, hey, listen, we're in an extreme moment, do something?
Well, that's the process, right? That's the process that includes their voice, so that it doesn't have to resort to protest, but they're part of it from the very beginning, whether it's from the procurement process, whether it's from the programs, and it's also making sure that they're participating in a way that's meaningful, where we're able to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, and where we are able to take what they're recommending and put into and manifest it, and where we can't and why. I think the conversation and transparency is important in making sure that we're educating and elevating our people as we work with them, and not just talking to them or about them, but with them.
And also, the other piece, which you all kind of alluded to in different ways, is how do we get this moment to energize New Yorkers? To not say, you know what, the political process is a mess, I'm disinterested. I don't think what will happen will impact my life in a substantial way. How do we use this moment not only to say, hold on, wait, let's look at these candidates, see who the best one is, but also let's get excited about the process. How do we begin to shift that? Because me personally, I don't feel like folks are excited about the particular mayoral race in ways I've seen in years past. How do we shift that as well in this moment?
There's a loss of hope, and there's also down to the candidates themselves. They have to be charismatic. They need to know how to communicate. They need to get into community and have these conversations. They need to meet with us, be on camera, talk to things on record, and be able to put skin in the game in that capacity, in that way. So honestly, I think the candidates need to show up, and also we need to actually believe that this system is set up in a way that change is actually possible. And that's part of the disinvestment that you're seeing now.
So we need some hope. And for me, when I think about advocates like all of you who work on a variety of issues, I'm always saying to myself, how do we pool our power together to make the candidates move in the way we think is important, that also resonates with the community in the ways that we know have? Because oftentimes we miss the moment. We're in a moment of an election, a lot of the attention goes to candidates. Many of the candidates don't care or don't deliver on the promises. I think we saw some of that with Eric Adams, who a lot of communities, not saying I did, but others rallied behind, and ultimately he did not deliver on many of the things folks wanted. And we're in that place again, potentially, if we don't elect the right candidate.
Well, I think it's also about thinking very critically about who has accountability power in government. Yes, the mayor has some power, but city council is also an equal partner. The comptroller is an accountability office on the city level as well as the state level. We have heard in recent months, we've learned a lot more about what governors could do to mayoral seats. There's actually a lot of accountability that has built in. Are we going to step up and actually do it? So when we're talking about elected leaders, I think it's important to also look at what are our city council members doing? How are they pushing on the budget? How are they pushing on Rikers? How are they thinking about the built environment? Accountability is not just one person's job, and it's also not solely on the people. There has to be accountability in government.
Certainly.
And that's a large part of the reason why independent commissions are created, so that we do have these bodies that don't report to a political party or have a specific political agenda, but report to the public.
But the question becomes, what happens when the political machine may be so compromised that those who can hold folks accountable choose not to? And many years ago, moons ago, I was working on the Raise the Age campaign. They were talking about building, a commission to look at these things, and folks in it like, we don't want another commission. Yeah. So how do we actually create the kinds of commissions that have teeth, that can force these folks to do what they need to do while also holding elected officials accountable? I think we're in a moment where folks have lost interest in the political game. So now communities that need power the most don't have them to act, or are, at least saying, I don't know if I want to do this. It leaves us in a unique political atmosphere, I think, where our strategy has to be different. And for me, the place where I look when I look to strategy is from the folks who've been doing the work. It's like, how do you strategically now not only push your issues, connect community to it, hold these elected officials accountable? Because Eric Adams probably should have been going anyway. But because folks wouldn't kind of push truth to power and use their power in that moment, he stayed around. And now the election, I believe, looks different, because what would have happened if Jumaane Williams would have been the mayor of New York City right now?
Yeah.
Perhaps Rikers Island would be closed.
Yeah, I just say one thing for New Yorkers, you have to be a part of an organization if you want to make change. You can't do it by yourself, complaining. And organizations, they need to develop coalitions, get involved with other big coalitions in order to build that people power, because that's all we have.
Well, Linda, Darren, Pascal, thank you for having us. We hope New Yorkers watch it and take heed to your messages. I'm Angelo Pinto, and this is Let It Rip. Now for some final thoughts, let's talk ranked choice voting. Here's how it works. In local primaries and special elections, you can now rank up to 5 candidates in order of preference. If no one gets over 50% of first choice votes, the lowest ranked candidates are eliminated, and their votes are redistributed based on next choices until someone crosses that 50% line. Sounds fair, right? In theory, ranked choice voting should give voters more choice and encourage candidates to appeal to a broader base. But let's talk about the reality for black voters. Studies have shown that while ranked choice voting can lead to more diverse candidates being elected, it also presents challenges for lower income communities, which often include black voters, have shown less engagement with ranked choice voting, partly due to the lack of outreach and education. So what does this mean for the black agenda? If candidates aren't clearly articulating policies that address black communities' needs, and if voters aren't fully informed about how to use ranked choice voting effectively, the system could end up silencing the very voices it aims to amplify. Bottom line, ranked choice voting has potential, but without targeted education and a commitment to addressing black issues, it risks perpetuating the status quo. I'm Angelo Pinto, and this is Let It Rip.